All right, so joining us down the line is Tucker Carlson with the Daily Caller and Fox Friends, the co-host of Fox Friends and Weekend. And, look, Tucker, some days you look at the rundown of our program as you come in and prepare for the show, and you say, you know what? The stars have aligned perfectly, because in the news today we have this story about the President of the United States. He's in Argentina, and he does an awkward version of the tango area, and it looks very stiff, and many people have said, well, maybe it wasn't appropriate of the president to be doing this, just days after we had a terror attack in Brussels. And I looked at the rundown, I said, well, look, if there's one guy in Washington who understands what it is to embarrass himself on the dance floor, it would be Tucker Carlson.
Oh! No. That is a totally fair point, and I have complete empathy for anybody who humiliates himself while trying to dance. Including even President Obama. I do think, though, if you take two steps back, the message he's sending is, I really don't care what you think at all.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
Yes.
I'm not interested in how this looks. Valerie Jarrett has approved it. I'm doing it. And up yours if you don't like it.
Well, there's one thing to say, okay, he wasn't very good. He was very stiff and awkward. And okay, set that aside for a moment. Is it appropriate at a time when the world is sort of mourning what happened in Brussels, and we have this horrific event on the world stage and attracting the world's attention? And here's the leader of the free world, the man who's supposed to be out there battling ISIS, dancing the night away in Argentina.
Well, look, let me just say, to your first point, I think he's a better dancer than I am, so I will allow that. Second, I don't think he sees himself as the leader of the free world. I don't think he fully has internalized the values that he's supposed to be defending. I think he sees himself as the leader of a very rich country, but I don't think he sees himself as the leader of a kind of a worldview that might triumph over totalitarianism. I don't see that at all. I mean, he's basically said out loud, and I think I'm being fair to him, that ISIS is not an existential threat to the country.
Right.
And I think he's seeing it solely in terms of body count. And on that score, he's right. I mean, ISIS, of course, is not going to invade America. It's not going to, kill half the population. That's just not going to happen. But he does not see this as a clash of worldviews. It's a totalitarian one, which is the worldview of radical Islam, and sort of the Western view, which promotes, a liberal understanding of, the individual and freedom of expression and assembly and all the rest, as guaranteed the Bill of Rights. I don't think he sees it as a showdown between those two things. And I think it's pretty hard to lead your country in a war like this, and it is a war, if you don't see it that way, in those terms.
For the record, your cha-cha-cha with Elena Grinenko left an indelible impression on me, Tucker Carlson.
Well, totally. Luckily, I was euthanized almost immediately. So.
Not during?
Almost during. Almost hit me with a dart gun.
Let's turn to the Republican race for the presidency as things continue to get pretty nasty between lots of warring factions. And I would love your take. By the way, I loved your panel discussion and your contribution to Fox News' election coverage last Tuesday. I really liked hearing your voice on that panel.
Well, thanks.
And I would love your take on this Never Trump campaign. I tweeted out yesterday on Twitter that I think a lot of people have very strong, passionate feelings one way or the other about their candidate, but at the end of the day, we have to unite behind the Republican nominee against Hillary Clinton. And the anger that I got from friends of mine, Tucker, friends of yours, the lines are drawn very, very clearly in this town within the Republican Party and the conservative movement. What do you think of what's happening here?
Well, let me say, I understand completely why people are not for Trump. I'm not endorsing Trump. I'm not promoting Trump, and I'm empathetic to people who say, "Wow, this is not the right guy. He's too reckless," or "I disagree with him." I get all that. What I'm so struck by, though, if you think Trump is reckless, how much more reckless is the response to Trump? This Never Trump idea is childish. If you don't like Trump, tell me why. If you think his views on immigration are wrong, counter them with your views. Tell me why you've got a better plan. If you think he's wrong on trade, tell me what you would do on trade. But they're not doing any of that. They're calling him a Nazi, and they're writing him off. Never Trump. I mean, that's their position. So here's what bothers me about it. The second that you say that your opponent is not just wrong but immoral, you've raised the stakes dramatically. Because what you're saying is anyone who supports him is also immoral. So the Weekly Standard had a piece 2 days ago called Vichy Republicans, written by someone I know and really like and respect, Michael Graham. But he he explicitly compared anybody who supports Trump to a Nazi collaborator. So at that point, no conversation is possible or even allowed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Thank you. I know exactly what you mean.
I know exactly
all too well.
And it goes a step further. If somehow it gets to a contested convention, and the man who enters the convention, maybe he hasn't clinched, but he's got more delegates than anybody else, is somehow denied the nomination, then you are going to be insulting all those people who have so strongly associated themselves with Donald Trump.
Well, it's cemented. And maybe the real problem with Trump is his presence in the race has kind of forced everybody's hand, and people have had to pull the mask off, and you find out what people really think and who they really are. And it turns out a lot of Republicans in D.C. not only don't care what voters think, but actively hate voters and have total contempt for them and think they should just shut up and obey. In a democracy, that's not an acceptable position to take in public. I'm sorry.
I agree with you.
Rules.
And Tucker, along those lines, talking about these, a lot of the Never Trump campaign is coming from people who live and work in D.C. and are part of the Republican machine here. I never like to question people's motives, but do you think that possibly part of this is just self-interest, that they know that if Trump can win the presidency without the consultant class, without all the money that is spent here in Washington, D.C. to attain the highest office, then that's an existential threat to what they do for a living?
Well, of course. And let me just say for the third time, I think it's totally legitimate to be really concerned about Donald Trump, bravely concerned.
Absolutely
I get that,
agree.
and I think it's totally fair. But every time I hear someone say he's destroying the Republican Party, I have the same thought, which is, how is that different from remaking the Republican Party, and why is that bad? Should parties change as the society they represent and the people they represent change? Of course they should. If you're not making money directly from the current Republican Party, it's pretty hard to be sad at the idea it's going to change a lot, because it's just not very effective. It's not loved by its own voters. And so it needs to change. So, do you know what I mean? You're exactly right. And I hate to question people's motives, but I don't know what to say. Clearly that plays a role, obviously.
I want to bring this thing full circle and tap into your expertise as someone who has actually competed on the Dancing with the Stars. And I want you to give me your sense of how Geraldo has fared thus far in this current
Your
season.
Fox News colleague, Geraldo.
You're a good friend.
Geraldo is like, literally, if you and I were to design the perfect Dancing with the Stars candidate, we'd arrive at Geraldo. I mean, because first of all, and everyone makes fun of his naked selfie on his 70th birthday. That guy is just fit, and I'm impressed by that. I really am. I don't think that's embarrassing. I think it's awesome. So he's in great shape for a man his age. He's not it's literally impossible to embarrass Geraldo. You couldn't do it under any circumstance. It's biologically impossible. And he loves being on TV, and good for him. I mean, I think Geraldo, even if he loses, wins. Yeah. I'm rooting for Geraldo. I would vote for Geraldo. I can't actually watch the show because it's too traumatic for me. If I could, I would vote for him.
All right, Tucker.
Thanks, Tucker.
Don't be a stranger, please. We love having you. We really do. Tucker Carlson, Daily Caller, Fox News,
He's
Fox
going
and
to
Friends.
tango off to start his workday.
It's true. It is true that Geraldo has no shame. Did you know the routine he did? They started it out with him cracking into a safe. Like the Al Capone's vault.
Al
Capone's
thing?
vault.
Oh,
and out of the vault came his dance partner.